Namaste, viewers. Welcome to Jaipur Dialogue USA and Jaipur Dialogue. And today I wanted to talk about a news item that appeared in CNN. And it was CNN that was talking about that some Florida shooting that happened, the gun had a symbol of Hakenkreuz, the Nazi symbol of Hakenkreuz, which CNN called Swastika. There we go again. That's the point which I'm trying to emphasize. That the Western media chooses to, whether out of ignorance or straight lack of integrity, Hindu symbol misrepresented in the Western media. And this is not only CNN, because everybody does the same. The Hindu symbols, Hindu beliefs, Hindu worship styles, everything is criticized from time to time, and nothing shows up more about it than when they do what they do. Now, we will also like to point out to CNN, Fox, and every other news agency, New York Times, Washington Post, there is an obvious difference between what Hitler's Hakenkreuz looked like and what Swastik looks like. Actually, a few years ago, during the peak of COVID time, New York Assembly was going to declare swastik as a hate symbol. We New Yorkers in Long Island and other places, we had a massive Zoom meeting. We educated them. We educated them that huge difference that exists between swastik and Hakenkreuz. Even Hitler never called it swastik. Some British guy chose to call it swastik. Maybe he was hiding the fact that Christian Hitler was waging a war on Christians in Europe. This is the reality part of it. Nobody talks about Hitler being a Christian. It is a sad part. I'm not even making a mockery of the Christian values. Not at all, far from it. That people use religious elements to further their cause is a matter of concern. And this is where it is important for all of us to become aware. Like we succeeded in New York State Assembly to thwart and cancel the entire idea of swastik being a hate symbol. We educated them. We prepared a comprehensive presentation. We showed it to them, the value and significance of swastik for us Hindus. Interestingly enough, that particular swastik resolution or law that was going to be passed was signed also by an Indian Christian who claimed that he had no idea what this symbol stands for us Hindus. This brings me to another element. If you watch the Western media, they very interestingly enough, but sadly true, they use the words Guru, Pandit, and Mantra, the words which are very significant for our belief system. Guru, Mantra, and Guru, Mantra, and the other item that I was talking about, Guru, Mantra, let's stick to that part. Pandit, yes, the word Pandit, So they talk about it in a very subtle, derisive manner. This is another important part. So these two things that I want to talk to you about is every Indian everywhere in the world, become aware of it. Correct the wrong narrative. If we don't correct the wrong narrative, it persists. And then in a Stockholm syndrome kind of scenario, we begin to ourselves accept it. And that's wrong. It's for all of us to truly arise, awaken, and assert what is the truth. The truth is, swastik symbol is not Hakenkreuz. Swastik symbol was not responsible for the killings that happened in the name of whatever is known as swastik, which is actually Hakenkreuz. Why can't they use the actual word, which is Hakenkreuz and not swastik? Think about it. It is for us to totally take it upon us to correct that narrative, whether they do it out of ignorance, willful default, or otherwise, to malign us, like in this century as we see it, as we are becoming more and more aware, you and I know that everything India, Hindu is being attacked systematically, everything that the country does. Another example, which I'll quote you here, which I was myself a participant in. I was a judge for a school debate, or basically presentation on Gandhi Jayanti kind of thing, about Gandhi, which was where the participants were young boys and girls from 8-year-old to 12th grader. Excellent speech making by all the Indian young boys and girls. But there was one thread that stood very singularly out there. Of the 20 almost candidates, 17 or 18 of them made one remark which ticked my head. It said, each one of them said, apart from talking about Gandhi's non-violent civil disobedience and everything else, they talked about one thing, that a Hindu nationalist killed Gandhi. That was a common theme among 17 to 18 children. And in my closing statement that I said, is that all of you did very well. But one fact that hit me hard was all of you are talking about the Hindu national who killed Gandhi. Yes, it is true that it was a Hindu who operated as a single lone wolf to do what he did. It did not have a party sanction, a religious sanction, or an endorsement by anybody. He operated singly, and he did it. He was caught, he suffered the penalty as per law, and he was sentenced to death. Matter over. I asked this question to all the students, including the organizers, that do we ever ask what was the nationality or religion of the man who killed Abraham Lincoln, who shot him? Do we talk about the nationality or religion of the man who killed John F. Kennedy, or Robert Kennedy, or Martin Luther King, or the man who nearly killed Ronald Reagan? There was stunned silence. We don't talk about that at all. We don't talk about the nationality or religion of those people who killed American leaders. But we absolutely, unhesitatingly, unabashed manner, we talk about Nathuram Godse, the Hindu nationalist who killed. Why? These are the kind of things that we have to pay attention to. Because if we do not pay attention to these major distortions presented as a minor fact, it affects our psyche. It affects our narrative. Look at the recent one that has happened. BBC talked about that India, by curtailing the export of rice, mind you, basmati rice was not prohibited from exporting. Other rice were, which is for common consumption. When that was done, British BBC talked about India is exporting food inflation, forgetting totally the fact that a war was not started by India in Ukraine. The war was not India's responsibility in Ukraine. India was the one which supplied thousands of vaccines during COVID pandemic, literally. But that is not talked about. The fact that, do you distort the reality in a manner that you make people like you and I suspect evil? Because now everybody will read BBC and look at us and talk about, oh, your Indians are responsible for exporting food inflation. But India was not responsible for the war in Ukraine, nor is it. The entire war in Ukraine and the food inflation and food shortage will end as soon as the Western leaders elect to stop the war. Think about it from these points of view. I'm today highlighting how you and I are under attack, including the famous or infamous caste thing that is going around in the United States. You and I are being framed as castes. These attacks on India and Hindus has to be fought by you and I, unitedly, individually, and collectively. You and I can individually correct the bogus narrative that goes on, whether it is ignorance or otherwise. You must reach out to CNN and Fox and others, MSNBC and Washington Post and New York Times. Make a cry out of that. Make an issue out of that. Listen, this is where you have to admire. And I say this with clear eyes open. You have to admire Muslims and Christians, how strongly they stand for their own beliefs. Nobody dare draw a picture of Muhammad, because there will be violence, there will be killings. You know that. They have drawn a line. That is their red line. Nobody dare cross that. I'm not saying that we have to be violent, but we have to make those educated steps to ensure that our narrative is not falsely conveyed to the world around us. If you and I don't do something about it, who will? And why will they? Because they will say these guys are not even bothered about it. That's what is important for us to figure out. Today, today's current news is that Soros-backed agency has released further information on Adani. I'm going to tell Adani, Mr. Adani, myself here today, here through this venue, why don't you commit $1 billion of your own funds to fight the falsity and the lies propagated by George Soros, who said publicly in World Economic Forum that he is committing $1 billion of his own funds to destabilize Modi, the destabilize Modi government, and hit hard on Hindus to bring back democracy. Aren't you irritated and fed up of these attacks? Don't you think that it's for us, you and I, to take that lead on? Because there are inconsistency and infirmity everywhere in the world. Look at United States itself, the country that we live in. How many mentions are there of irregularities that happen in the justice system here, or the way people are being treated under law? Republican Party is talking about the dual system of law here. Is anybody talking about it? Let's talk about it. It's our voice matters. We are in democracy. Voices matter. Learn from Christians and Muslims. Look at how the Christians, the extreme wing of Christians, not every Christian, by the way, I'm very clear about that, how the extreme parties, extreme religious fanatics began to attack Hindus, that Vivek Ramaswamy is a Hindu, he's not fit to be the president. He doesn't have our vote. Ladies and gentlemen and friends, it's time for us to raise our voices individually, collectively, using the institutional framework. Where is it going? Let's reach out to all the media agencies that you cannot get away with canard, falsity, and misrepresenting what is not, and overlooking the fact and the truth. This responsibility belongs to you and I. Whether you and I are Hindus, Indians, anywhere in the world, we have to correct the narrative and hit hard on what is wrong. Please like, subscribe, and support our channel. Satyameva Jayate, as I always say, truth must triumph. And for truth to triumph, you and I have to tell the truth. Thank you.